Welcome to the Wolf and Bull podcast. I am the wolf.
And I am the bull. I don't even want to listen to what that sounds like.
And I am the lamb.
There we go.
Very good.
Well, we have a special episode today, don't we?
Absolutely.
Per usual. Yeah.
They're all special, but this is especially special.
Especially
That's a
special.
real phrase. I don't
It
know.
is a real
I
phrase.
feel special for this.
That's what counts right there.
You totally. I mean, I'm excited. It's going to be a really good conversation. We have, once again, returning for episode 73, valedictorian of his training class, rookie of the year, officer of the year, detective of the year, the 24th sheriff of Pinal County, and a man known for his fear not, do right attitude. Special guest, the Honorable Sheriff Mark Lamb has returned again.
All right.
Man, I feel privileged.
Well,
This is awesome.
We're excited to have you here.
We are.
You know, it's funny when you haven't met someone and you see some videos on a person or see some, I was going to say tweets, but maybe not, maybe some reels and things like that. You're never sure. Right. And then you sit down and meet someone and you have a conversation. And even though the conversation was filmed and recorded, it was, I don't know, it was a down to earth conversation about real topics in a straightforward way.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how refreshing that is.
I appreciate it. I always say I'm not smart enough to do any other way. So you just get me, and hopefully people like it. And if they don't, I don't, there's not much I can do about it.
I don't know why people wouldn't like that, though. You know,
See, I think that's, you know, you and I have talked before about how I like to overcomplicate things. It's kind of in
You don't say.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I like to see the detail and the granular nature and dice it up and, you know, how many bits of this and pieces of that to turn it into some formula.
Yeah.
That's kind of my nature.
You're the professor.
But I think that what Sheriff Lamb does is he keeps, even though he's got all that probably going through his head, and you probably want to comment on a million things all the time, you just know that there are certain lanes and certain things that are truly black and white. And if you stick with those, there's no gray area about what you're talking about.
You nailed it. The other day, one of my guys that I work with to Protect America Now wanted to send out a text email about gas prices. And I called him and I said, the email's great, but it has nothing to do with me. Like, I'm a sheriff. I'm going to stay in my lane. Yes, I have an opinion on gas prices. Yes, I have an opinion on a lot of things. But the hardest part is just staying in your lane and talking about things that you should talk about.
Yeah.
Now, I said, if you want to talk about how gas prices is affecting our budgets in law enforcement, or how this is causing a recession, or it's making it hard for us to hire people because income is no longer relative to cost of living, then we can talk about that. But you're right. The hardest thing is to try to stay within your lane and talk about the things that are related to sheriff's office, sheriff's work, the rule of law, that type of thing. So,
see, I always look at everything as being blended in some way, shape, or form, and I think I'm right about that. That things they do contact with each other, they do affect each other. But if you're in a realm, if you're talking about the border with someone, which has got to be, I would imagine from your perspective, everything about the border and related to the negative aspects of what's happening there has got to be premium in your mind all the time. So all these other things can affect that in one way, shape, or another, but you only want to talk about the effect, not all these periphery things.
right.
So,
Right.
yeah.
It's for the old, I played baseball. You can only play one position at a time.
Yeah.
And you learn how to play your position.
What position?
Center field.
Center field.
Yeah.
So
All right.
you learn how to just play in that position. And sometimes you might end up in somebody else's,
Left
a little
field,
bit
right
in the
field.
left field, a little bit in the right field, maybe down towards shortstop. And in the end, you have to hope that everybody else does their job and you stay in your position.
Yeah.
It's funny that you say it that way, because that's one of the things I look at in today's kind of polarized environment.
Yeah, people don't
especially in
stay
politics.
in their lane. They don't at all. And
matter of fact, they get a pedestal
Yeah.
of some kind. They get in a position like yourself where you have some notoriety, you have a platform that you want to use to better things, but then you start talking about things that you have no context to talk about right now.
Yeah.
And I see that all the time. I see that with artists.
Well, it's not
all
to
the
say
time.
that people can't talk about
They
certain
certainly can,
things.
but
it's
I mean,
just it's how they do it, right? So I mean,
it's the I'm right, you're wrong thing that is the problem.
And it dilutes your voice.
It really does.
It dilutes the power of your voice. For example, border security. I talk a lot about that. If I go off and start talking about Ukraine and start talking about all these other things, I might mention the fact that you're spending money in Ukraine and it's instead of at the border where it should be being spent.
Right.
But I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole into all that other stuff because it's not my bailiwick.
Yeah.
Right.
And you and I, when we sit around as friends, we might talk about it and I'll have my opinion on it. But on a public level, on a national level, I think it's important just to talk about the things that you have your expertise in.
Exactly.
And I think that your voice is stronger when you do that.
Yeah.
If I start talking about things that just don't have anything to do with law enforcement or a sheriff, people are going to stop listening to me when I do talk about things that are important. So.
Yeah, no,
I agree.
I couldn't agree more. So I mean, since the last time you were on our episode, you have been up to 1.5 million things. Like you've been all over the place. I'm watching your Instagram feed, and you're here, you're there, you're all over the place.
Man, I don't post half the stuff I do.
I would imagine.
I don't post a quarter of the stuff I do.
So then I'm 2 million, 3 million, 4 million and a half.
Yeah, I've been a lot of places. It's been fortunate to have the opportunity to go speak in a lot of different places, talk about the rule of law, talk about border security. And frankly, my message is always one of hope. One of hope and determination, perseverance, overcoming these challenges we're facing as a country, coming together as a country and as a people, and really helping people understand that's really where our power is as a country, is we the people.
Yeah.
No matter what color, religion, race, ethnic background, cultural background you come from, political, philosophical, we're all Americans.
Yeah, we're all on the same side.
And trying to find that common ground and encouraging people to find the common ground. So been fortunate to be a lot of places speaking. Been on a lot of, Fox, Fox Business, Newsmax, OAN, Real America's Voice.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've got the political thing. So I've got political candidates showing my commercials with me in it, walking in with them in the desert. I mean, so yeah, I've been in 1,000,001 places.
Yeah.
Or 4,000,001 places.
4,000,001. Yeah. You've been doing great. I mean, obviously you recently published your recent book, American Sheriff, Rules to Live By.
I did.
The Bull is well-versed. I have finished.
I'm
well-versed.
I'll tell you what I really liked. There's a lot of things I liked about it, but I think we'll probably hear from the Wolf shortly about kind of the framework you used for that book, which is a wonderful poem by Rudyard Kipling. Yeah. But the way I've read a ton over the course of my career. I've been in sales and then management and then owned businesses for a long time. So I read a lot of, the rules to live by, the things to do to sell better, the kind of the framework things, some of the very popular old books that have been around since the 50s and some of the new books from all the gurus that came out. But what you did was very interesting because you took kind of each stanza, right?
Yep.
And you married that with a historical story, some longer than others, but a story about a person's character, some of the things they went through, some of the things in their life they went through, and how it tied to that stanza, and then a personal anecdote usually, and then kind of a rule to live by. So it flowed very nice.
Oh, thank you.
And
I always worry because I'm not an author. When I write
what are you talking about? You got 2 books.
I've got 2 books.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think you can say that. Amongst your 4 million and 2 travel spots, this is 4,000,003 just come out. Right?
Keeps going.
Yeah. No, it's great.
I love that poem, and I've always loved that poem. And I just, it's you have these thoughts that come through your head when you read the poem and you think of the poem. And then I love the Founding Fathers.
Yeah.
And I thought the timing of the book was going back to what I had said about stories of courage and determination and perseverance and sacrifice and all of those things. I think we lose touch with those things, that is part of life.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And now the beauty of when you have challenging times and stormy weather is it opens the door for a hero. It opens the door for somebody to come in and save the day or to give you some guidance through it. And, the book was designed to I thought the poem is even more applicable nowadays with just where the world is. Mm-hmm. And then, sharing some stories that are close to me about the founding fathers of people who really showed grit and determination and perseverance and sacrifice, and a few of my own stories.
I think from, you mentioned a second ago about the we the people kind of thing, the coming together that's needed, and that this is a political period, and it seems like the political seasons run into each other all the time now.
Yeah.
So as soon as we're done with this one, we're going to start thinking about the 2024.
It doesn't stop, but it just keeps going.
But one of the quotes from, I forget which chapter it was, but you were talking about Ben Franklin. Of course, it was he was not an advocate for us parting ways with England at first.
Yeah.
I mean,
and
the richest man in America
he said every infringement is not a cause for rebellion.
Exactly. So he was very cautious at the beginning.
I thought he was a spy.
But what was the famous line he used that just married up with what you just said a minute ago? Well, we're either hang together or we're going to end up hanging separately.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
And that, every time I hear a story about the founding fathers, and it's a thin thread. I read the book 1776 years and years and years ago, and it was the first time I read a historical book that had kind of a flavor of storytelling in it that said a lot of the same things you did. And the fact that we actually came into existence is such a
unbelievable
thin line.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
and in your book, which was 120 pages, something like
140.
Those short stories about a half a dozen characters, or maybe it was a dozen, tied that together really nice.
Like George Washington, the very first chapter, I don't think people realize how close we were to failing. Mm-hmm. In that first chapter, the story of crossing the Delaware, for many Americans, has been lost.
Yeah.
Just what it all entailed. But really, it was George Washington's first time leading on the battlefield. Mm-hmm. To that point, he had not led on the battlefield because he was, doing the whole thing. But he knew the importance that this was likely to be the last time. He even said to his brother, he's like, I fear that the game is up. Mm. And,
wow,
and
that's wild.
He knew the importance of it, and he was so determined. Mm-hmm. And that's what, the first chapter talks about. But
it's really, I think it was kind of one of the best things to do, because in any book, when you're writing stuff, and I've always been a would-be writer, still haven't gotten to the point where I've actually finished something like this, but you got to have a hook.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that story is definitely a hook, and we'll get to some of this.
We will.
We got to get to his.
No, this is good. This is good.
The wolf always has a great.
Well,
monologue.
no, I couldn't stop this.
Shit, you call the wolf?
Oh, yeah.
That's all you had to say.
Yeah, no. Honestly, it's funny. We're all on the same page because it segues right into my monologue.
Perfect.
Before I jump into it, though, for our listeners and our viewers, if you like what you see, if you like what you hear, if you're a fan of Sheriff Mark Lamb, go ahead and follow us on Instagram. Follow Sheriff Mark Lamb on Instagram, and you can find our content on YouTube as well with a subscription. But let me go ahead and jump right into the monologue. I have some mood music. Unfortunately, Sheriff Mark Lamb, you will hear it in post. So, if you're watching or listening to this episode, then you're aware of the sensitive time that we're currently in America. It's everyone's favorite time of year, election season. Children wake up late at night to see if there are any ballots underneath their Christmas tree. Parents excitedly wake up early in the morning to see if there are any ballots in their mailboxes. Even the deceased wake up from their graves to excitedly exercise their right to vote. It's a wonderful time of year, and of course, I jest. Parents never excitedly check their mailboxes, even if there are any ballots in there. Jokes aside, America has been through some tumultuous years, to say the least. Per our last episode, and something that I'm sure we'll discuss today, Sheriff Lamb, elected or soon-to-be elected officials, law enforcement officers, and those that have given their valuable time to the cause have been doing their very best to fight against the insidiousness of the fentanyl drug trade and border issues that we face, not only in the great Grand Canyon state, but also throughout the country. Public service is an extreme sacrifice and one that shouldn't be ignored, forgotten, or taken lightly. In getting to know Sheriff Lamb and through reading his book, American Sheriff, Traditional Values in the Modern World, I've come to understand that Sheriff Lamb truly cares about his fellow countrymen, the county he helps to protect, and the great state we live in, and the country that we're a part of. He's a public servant, yes. He's well known, yes. And he's also someone I think actually cares about those around him. In a time where the lines between good and evil, right and left, up and down, seem to be getting more blurred every day, it's an absolute necessity that we as Americans can see past our preferred bias to those around us, recognizing our differences aren't what define us, but what actually bring us together. We brought Sheriff Lamb onto the show not only to discuss what he's been up to in relation to his new book and the fight against fentanyl, but also to discuss his views and his experiences as a public servant, and also what it means to be a leader in the face of opposition and censorship.
Very nice.
I've been
As
practicing
always.
in the mirror.
That was nice.
Thank you.
I loved it.
Thank you. Yeah.
You know, I think the ballad in Under the Christmas Tree is more like the coal in your stocking this year. And it's the mail-in ballot, which you oftentimes don't know where that ends up.
I had to break it to you. If you have a ballot underneath your Christmas tree, it's too late.
You might as well put Kris Kringle right in the...
You might as well crinkle it up and throw it away.
It's like it's the final swing vote.
That's right.
It's a month and 30 days later. We have to continue. This is the final
We
swing
have
vote.
to count it. He meant to put it in there.
And honestly, you know what, Sheriff? I don't know. Did you happen to? I know you're busy as hell, but did you happen to listen at all to the speech last night, Biden's speech?
I didn't even know about it.
It was very short. It was 15 minutes, something like that. It was not memorable, but I happened to be driving back from Southern California at the time, so I had it on, so I was listening, and I was a little not conflicted, but confused, which doesn't surprise me from listening to our current president, but that. Having said that,
I'm not surprised.
He was spending a lot of time trying to conflate the situation that happened with the Speaker of the House's husband in January 6th, which I thought was a very, very long reach to make. I could only paraphrase. I could only talk a little bit about.
Is there recorded evidence of this? Because I'd
probably. You should listen to it. You should listen to it. It's And I found myself thinking a couple of different things toward the end of that, because he was very much talking about how people should not deny elections. That was where he was going with a lot of his conversation. And I thought, I'm very confused, because this is the head of the party that is likely to lose the House, maybe the Senate too, in another week. That's and this is part of this is
we'll see.
Prognostication for a week from now.
But they'll find out on the day this releases.
He spent a lot of time talking about mail-in ballots.
Yeah.
And how everybody has to be patient because it's going to take a long time to determine certain races. I was like, why is he saying this?
Didn't they call?
And of course, my mind, as you've said before, I don't want to sit here and wear a tinfoil hat, but I felt myself, thinking all kinds of crazy things.
Well, didn't they call the what was it prior to this election with Carrie Lake? Didn't they call in favor of what's her name before Carrie Lake won the nomination?
Of Katie Hobbs?
Yeah.
No, it was actually about a week
something.
It was about a week ago, and it was on Fox, and they had the little image down in the corner that said that Katie Hobbs had won 53 to 47%, and it was like they had both their pictures. So Fox says, "Oh no, Fox 10, we messed up.
Oh.
We're just testing our images for when the election night."
Okay.
So,
yeah, that's the problem. I mean, we could go down quite a rabbit trail.
We really could.
We really could. But and the problem I have these days, and I voiced this kind of last time you were here, and I've voiced this many times with you, is that I've been forced into a position where I doubt almost everything now. It's so difficult for me. I hear about what just happened down in Brazil, the election down there. Very close, went to the kind of the leftist socialist person down there. But why are we sending people down there to make sure a transition happens? Why are there mobs in the street saying that wasn't what was really going on? And why is big tech censoring anybody that wants to say otherwise?
You're asking way too many questions.
But see, my point is all these little things that were very subtle that occurred here and have probably occurred for longer than we know in the United States. Why are they not? They're not even behind a curtain anymore.
No.
You can see them very clearly.
And they've called you, they like this term election denier. I was telling my wife, the next time somebody says that I'm an election denier, I'm going to be like, not as bad as Hillary Clinton or Stacey Abrams, but I got my questions.
Didn't they invent the term?
Like Al Gore went on for a long time about how he was cheated. Hillary Clinton went on. Stacey Abrams still claims she got cheated.
Right.
And when she loses again, she's going to claim that she was cheated again. And they're shooting themselves in the foot because what they're trying to do is close that door on there.
Yeah.
Now, the way they've created this voting system in this United States has left us open for fraud and distrust in the system. I have gotten involved, and people keep calling me an election denier, and I've said, look, I haven't talked about the 2020 election. What I have said is I have seen concerning things that I think that it is important that we close some of those gaps where we can.
Yeah.
As a sheriff, I have seen that both Republicans and Democrats have felt disenchanted with the voting process.
Right.
And so as a sheriff, I can't fix that overnight. But what I can do is say, where does my role as a sheriff fit in with the elections? So I started getting familiar with election laws. I started getting involved in trying to do PSAs in my county on a national level. I tried to help get sheriffs involved, help give citizens a place where they could call and say, hey, look, I think something weird's going on here. That's what we tried to do, is create an opportunity for that. And it's crazy because I've had tons of people get up and just attack me for it.
Yeah.
And it's like,
it's confusing.
this isn't a party issue. I'm doing my job as a sheriff because there are laws that directly relate with election violations.
Yeah.
And I have tried to make my county aware of it. I have any issues that have been brought to my attention that I thought were valid issues that needed more attention. I would take those to the county attorney and say, look, can I get your professional opinion as to what this or this should be? And so I think I've done my job as a sheriff, but I keep getting labeled as this person that is being political as it relates to elections. And I am trying to protect the election for everybody.
Right.
And I am trying to give at least citizens of Pinal County restore some of that trust in, hey, at least we're doing it right in our county.
Well, I think the thing that gets me, like, as a apathetic millennial, my entire generation, that's just what we are now. We're just disenfranchised with everything. The thing that gets me is, like, I am expected politically from an election standpoint to trust every outcome, either side, because to your point, it's not about who wins. It's about how they win, whether on any side they're on. Right. And I'm expected to trust that. Across the board, but then I get looked at as crazy when I'm skeptical of a powerful industry such as the pharmaceutical industry telling me to never ask any questions. It's like, it doesn't make any sense.
Well, there's
when your government, if they're telling you to not ask questions, you should be skeptical as well. This country was founded on people asking questions, saying, hey, this isn't right. That's why we have the First Amendment.
Yeah.
Not only for the freedom of speech, but also the right to redress grievances, to peaceably assemble, to redress grievances with your government is a constitutional and a fundamental right protected by the Constitution. It's a God-given right, protected by the Constitution. And yet when you have the government telling you, you can't deny it, you can't ask questions about it, you need to accept the outcome. No, I don't. I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
And if I see shenanigans, if I see things not A and B and C not adding up, or 1, 2, 3, and 4 not adding up, then I'm going to ask questions.
Right. Well, and the same people that are telling you can't do that would get up in arms if they were in the reverse position. I mean, it's like, look, I'm in the middle. I think Mr. Trump is very funny. I think he's got some very funny things sometimes that he said that are just, wow, chef's kiss, comedy gold. And I like some of his foreign policy takes. I wasn't a big fan of the Israel thing, but that's just me. With that being said, if it had been reversed, you'd see these same people, these same media organizations who, we've covered this on an episode, are all owned by like 15 billionaires. Like the same people, all of them, they would be saying the same thing you're saying.
100%.
So it's like, I just don't get it.
I'm telling you, it's going to flip. They're going to get shellacked in this election. And in a lot of the places where there's where it's close, they're going to cry foul.
Yeah.
And guess what? I'm trying to stop that from happening
in
one way or the other.
That's exactly what he was setting up with that speech. That's my whole point. And
it's so lazy though.
But there's
too,
there's this desire for people that have this perception that they have the ultimate right future direction, whatever that is. It's your elites, right? It's your political betters, whatever you want to call that cabal of people. They want you to have faith blindly, okay?
But only in the things that they want you to have. Like you can't do it in other ways though. If you have it in any other way,
no one should ask you to do that. Heck, your religion doesn't even ask you to have blind. Has asked you for faith, belief, but it never asks you to be blind about it. It always asks you to. We're human beings. We're questioning animals. We do it all the time. That's one of the things that's so fun about what we do here. We question all kinds of things. And we all have our beliefs and directions, and we're all open and susceptible to people pushing us one way or pulling us another, either rightly or wrongly. But this idea of having this faith blindly in people, number one, that we don't even know, and number two, that have agendas that we obviously look at that are adverse to everything that we've grown up and known about.
They're not even asking you to have faith. They're telling you to sit down and shut up.
Yep. Well,
eat
maybe
your
that's
food.
a better way to put it.
Don't sit down and over there.
We're going to.
And I don't want to hear a word about how good the food is or isn't.
Yep,
is what they're telling you, and I'm not okay with that.
No, and I'm not either. I don't think anyone here is. I think that the frustration that I have with all of this is like you guys do know and we've Bull and I've talked about this. Like it seems unfortunately that there's a group of people that is closing the door behind them. They've had the best time of their lives, made a ton of money, were free, did all these things. All that aside, I'm using this as an example.
Sure.
They're closing the door behind them without realizing that the people like myself and the generations after me are going to have to deal with this nonsense. Yeah. So what happens? What happens rhetorically? Let's go down this road. America's voting system just doesn't work anymore because no one trusts it. What happens to the rest of the world? Like, look, we're in a good position here in this country, but if America falls apart, we'll kind of maybe get back on our feet, kind of, sort of, maybe in a different way. But what about third world countries that depend on us? What about any semblance?
I was just talking about the Brazil thing.
I know. It's like with the whole shipping thing with the last 2 years we've talked about. No one seems to think or even bring up, even with some semblance of seriousness, about what happens with those third world countries that depend on food. Like, are we just going to pretend that famine won't occur because of all the backlogs of the fertilizer and all that stuff because of all this nonsense? I mean, everything's connected. And like, I don't know. It's one thing I have to say. Sheriff Lamb, there's no brown stuff on my nose. You are a breath of fresh air when it comes to someone who has, some level of fame and notoriety, but also someone as a public servant who understands that people around him are actually people. Mm-hmm. It's that's kind of where the disconnect for me is, because I'm, as a libertarian constitutionalist first, moral constitutionalist technically, and libertarian second, I don't like public service people. But reading your book, I'm like, okay, well, Sheriff Lamb's genuine, and even though he has some political or politician aspects of it, he's genuine. And the only two things those things have in common is that they rhyme. So you're one of the. I think he's a genuine individual, and I think more people need to be that way.
Yeah, goes back to the poem that you're going to read in a minute.
I will read it right now.
I think it's the last stanza, last chapter, last stanza. Yeah. Right. I wish I could memorize stuff like you do sometimes, but you're talking about walking with kings, but don't forget who you are. Or lose the common touch. Or lose the common touch, and. I was telling Jen and Cam before you got here that my perception is that you came from a background that revered, number one, hard work, right? And that's what part of what life is really about. But number two, did not put up false pretenses, okay? And I think in your position now, you probably have something on the mirror or something in your office where you have to repeat that to yourself all the time, because the position you're in, the notoriety you've had, it changes people.
It does.
Hugely.
There's no way it can't change you. Mm-hmm. You have to alter some aspects of your life based on just how, your position. And, people will always say, oh, you changed. Well, I hope I did.
Yeah.
That's life. You're supposed to change and get better and better and better. It's not, but then that's what I love about this poem. And I know you're going to read it. And that stanza you're talking about is not, if you can walk with kings nor lose the common touch.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that's really it's finding that balance in life. And that's what I love about this poem. This poem is a balance of things, of the balance of the good and the bad, the balance of triumph and the balance of disaster, the balance of winning, the balance of getting your teeth knocked in.
Right.
And that is the balance of it all. And that's what I love about the poem. And honestly, it's poems like this and other things that I hear and listen to consistently that help keep me grounded and say, yes, you're achieving more, you're getting to new levels, but you still need to say, hey, I'm going to come over here and read to these kids.
Yeah.
I mean, my church, where I'm at church, I work with the kids that are 8 years old. That's who I teach. I sit in there with them. I sing songs with them on Sunday. And I love it because it keeps me grounded to the people and who I truly serve. So,
well, I think before I read the poem, I think that's one thing that I've observed, obviously, with reading your book, but also in the opposite when it comes to people who don't stay grounded. There always is this consistent narrative of people who become super, super, super famous. And then they get so famous they have no more friends. Yeah. And then they're all alone. And it's like, how you counterbalance that is by staying grounded.
That's right.
Like,
do you know who ends up, what happens is other people come in and see opportunities to weasel in there and become a buffer. And they, in essence, are controlling. Mm-hmm. I see it with politicians all the time. They start off, it's just them that show up. Like, I don't have any security. Any event I go to, it's just me. My wife comes with me as sometimes. But I watch all these other people that don't have near the notoriety or anything. Nobody knows them. And they show up and they've got 2 or 3 people of security, and they've got all these other people that are like ready to scurry them off. So they don't have time for pictures or whatever. It's like, then you did your schedule wrong and your people are buffering you too much. And what happens is there's these other people that people just like control. It's what's happening in this country. The government wants control. People want control. That also happens on a political level where you have these people that aren't as important as the person they're trying to control. And they get some level of control by saying, hey, I keep them on task. I do this. But what happens is they control them to the point where they lose contact with the people. Yeah. And they lose that common touch.
Yeah, and you're Nancy Pelosi sitting in front of a $50,000 fridge in the middle of a shutdown talking about your ice cream. I mean, like it's that's the thing. That's just for me, like, and we've talked about this, like with the power base and people like knowing that they believe what they believe and not, and we have differences there. But one thing I've noticed when it comes to that particular group, because it is a particular group and it grows and it gets smaller, is like I just don't think they have that ability for that foresight. Because it's like, look, when I'm 95, let's hope I make it there as a wolf. I mean, we don't really have that long of a lifespan. But when I'm 95, like, I don't want to be despised. I know. Like, I don't want to be left to my own devices. And when it comes to, unfortunately, in this country, we tend to let political people live off of the country for their entire life, which should change, but that's another episode. With that being said, like, I don't think they realize that they're not going to come out the good guys. I mean, you either become the hero of the people, you stay around long enough to become their enemy. I mean, it's just unfortunate.
And you're also in a society where we love to create heroes, but we also love to see them fall.
Oh. Yeah.
And so
isn't that a shame?
It is. We are never happy. We love you today, and we want to hate you tomorrow.
And the unfortunate part about that too, because on a sister podcast of ours, shout out History Out of the Box, we talk about individual political people and individual people, and we kind of humanize them. And what people don't realize by demonizing people who have impact on the world is they don't open the door for themselves to have any impact. If I demonize all the people who created the world that I currently live in, then what am I going to do to change it? Because I'm not good enough.
There's an old saying that nobody's ever erected a statue to a critic. No. It's not. You don't have to agree with everybody you come up against, and you can be critical of all kinds of things. You can have your own ideas. It's the free speech thing we've just talked about a minute ago.
Yeah.
But you have to contribute positively in some way, shape, or form.
Yep.
You can't just be the guy looking to criticize everybody else. It's kind of the easiest thing you can do.
Yeah, it's easy to throw pot shots. But let's read this poem, because I think this is a phenomenal poem. Now, this poem is called
You
If.
read it in Rudyard's,
No,
accent?
I wanted to, no. I like this poem. I'll give him respect, okay? So this poem is called If, and it's by Rudyard Kipling. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too, if you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken, and stoop and build 'em up with worn-out tools, if you can make one heap of all your winnings, and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose, and start again at your beginnings, and never breathe a word about your loss, if you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it. And, which is more, you'll be a man, my son. Sheriff Lamb, I would like you to talk about what that poem means to you.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I think, one of the parts that I love the most is if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same. I think oftentimes we see things, especially like what we're looking at in this world now. Life is crazy. It seems like it's just disastrous. But really, it's just an imposter. Good is an imposter too. You take a fighter who wins all the time, who's triumphant. He gets soft. He gets lazy. Stops working out as hard as he should. Well, the guy who loses pushes harder. Every day he's in the gym, getting stronger. And eventually that becomes the more victorious or triumphant position. The fact that you lose, you think that might be disastrous, but really you're developing yourself to be stronger, faster, more powerful, more intelligent. I love every aspect of it. If you can have watch your words twisted by knaves to set a trap for fools, that couldn't be more true now. Knaves are unscrupulous and dishonest men. And we see that with the media. We see that with other politicians where they will take your words and twist them up to set a trap for the fools out there and make you think. And they do this in the media all the time. They'll write a story to make they oftentimes think of the common person as a fool, that they'll buy into what they're saying. And then what they really don't know, what the people don't know is that these people have twisted somebody else's words. What I told you before, what I love about the poem is it doesn't insinuate that life is going to be easy. It's basically insinuating throughout the poem that life is a challenge and there are going to be tough times. And it says that if you encounter this, you should do this. If you encounter this, don't fall into this. If people hate you, don't give in to hating. If you can watch your words twisted by knaves to set a trap for fools. If you can lose and pick up all their pieces and put it back together again and do it all again. If you can risk it and lose it all and never breathe a word about your loss. And when you go through all these things, it says in the end, if you can do these things, the earth is yours, and what is more, you'll be a man, my son. And it's true. You learn how to be a man by overcoming the challenges that life gives you.
It's a poignant. Each stanza is pretty poignant, and I said it earlier, half an hour ago or so. It's something about balance, and that's how it spoke to me.
Yeah,
it spoke to me about, and there, the neatest thing about reading poetry, or a specific anecdote or story, is when it reminds you of something personal. And that, when I was complimenting you earlier on the book, it was great that you had some historical figures in there talking about that, because it's something everybody can identify with. Some people in there that I had never heard of, which we can talk about, and some people that I knew of course, but knew different things about them. But every one of these things reminded me of something in my own life, my own story, good or bad, in the way I took things, the way I complained about something that maybe I shouldn't have, or the way I viewed I've had a lot of success in my life. And it's, I look back and a lot of it was very hard work. A lot of it was perseverance, more so than, ability, really. Right. And everybody knows people like that. Everybody knows the people that are naturally talented at something, whether it's sports or academics or something like that. And there are other people that will just simply outwork everybody else. And there's a combination that works for me. I've had some great successes, and I've gotten to a certain point, and I remember a day like it was yesterday where one of my companies had reached a certain level, and I was like, the rest of my life is a home run, man. Nothing else is going to change. And it was like the week I got back from having that conversation with somebody in Cancun, of all places, where I had that conversation, some circumstance came along and reminded me that life is a journey.
Yeah.
Right. And so this thing jumped out at me right away. My favorite chapter was number 5. That's the disaster and triumph one.
Yeah.
And you talked about a story about a Chinese farmer.
Yeah.
That I thought just made the point wonderfully. I don't know if you can share that or not.
Yeah. So the story is there's a Chinese farmer, and he's got his son and he's got a horse, and that's what they do. They go out and plow the field and do all that stuff. Well, one night a storm comes in and it blows down their fence, and they wake up in the morning, see their fence down, and find that their horse is gone. So the neighbors come over, and the neighbors are like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. You have the worst luck. Oh my gosh, God must be mad at you. This is terrible. What will you do? How will you overcome this? This is awful. And he just says, maybe we shall see. He and his son go out. They fix the fence that day. They put in the work. They don't have a horse anymore. You could have said, why fix the fence? But they go out and fix the fence anyway. The next day, his horse comes back with 10 more horses. Now he's got 11 horses. And now the neighbors come over and they're like, you're so blessed. What will you do? What are you going to do with all these horses? God loves you. This is amazing. This is such a blessing. And what does he say? Maybe we shall see. The next day, he's got all these 11 horses now. Some people might say that's a great thing. Well, now you got to go out and break all these horses and get them ready. So he sends his son out to break one of the horses. His son goes out. He's breaking one of the horses, gets bucked off, breaks his leg. The neighbors come over and they're like, this is horrible. You lost your son. How will you plow your field? How will you break all these horses? This is just the worst thing ever. God is so unhappy with you. You're so unlucky. Maybe we shall see. The next day, the Chinese army comes through and takes every young man of age, and leaving only behind his son because his son had a broken leg. The moral to the story is that what you think is a triumph isn't always a triumph, and what you see as a disaster isn't always a disaster. The broken leg seemed disastrous, but it kept his son from going with the army. 11 horses showing up seems like a really great thing, but then you got to go break all those horses, and you got to feed those horses, and there's a lot of things that come along with that. And there's just so much in that story that really just illustrates that it's just a life.
Yeah. I think Kipling using the word imposter was what it made so powerful, because it personified that. And it really jumped out at me. I love this kind of stuff too. I really do. I think this is it. There are definitely life lessons there.
Yeah.
If people are willing to absorb
to see
them.
it. Mm-hmm. And that's why I called it rules to live by, is because I'm not telling you how to live. These are just some rules that if you can apply them, you can live by them. And going to the triumph and disaster, the example I give in the end of the chapter is the greatest, if you're a Christian, the greatest example of this being triumph and disaster being imposters is the worst thing to ever happen to the world if you're a Christian is the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. But the best thing to happen to the world was the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, because it opened the door to the atonement and the resurrection. And so they're all imposters. It's just how you look at it. It's the attitude you have and how you approach life that really defines what happens.
You know, it's one of the things I'm always amazed about, because even for folks that don't have a certain belief system that we share here, the books, the stories told, the life lessons in the Bible,
they're worth reading.
They're incredible.
They are,
and they're applicable too.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing I don't really understand, because I think it's like my generation and then like Zoomers. Like, I don't think they really understand that. Look, no one's saying you have to believe it. No. Like, you can, reading it enough has some credence. I mean, I've read the Bible multiple times. I've also read some other books that are not like the Bible at all. And I take from the Bible the things that I think are applicable to me. And then those other books I read because, why not? They're
like to learn.
To learn. And I just don't know why people don't do that, because it's like, you're not going to like, well, you're not going to die if you read it,
There's sincerely, and it's always fun to try to look, not fun, it's always interesting to try to look for root causes behind some of the things that occur today. And my personal belief is one of the main root causes behind kind of the deterioration of certain ethical standards, certain moral imperatives. It comes from the lack of family and community structure. Mm-hmm. And that includes, in what we just talked about, a structure around belief systems. Yeah. And I think one of the things that our current form of government is doing wrong is it's trying to become the mother and father. It's trying to be everything to everybody. And it's not just saying, hey, we're here to help. They're supposed to be there to help. It's saying, don't worry about having a father or a mother. Be a single parent household. Don't worry about the way you grew up, or the family framework, or the community. Don't worry about it anymore. We're here. Big Daddy Government is here.
Daddy Biden and Mommy Pelosi.
Oh, God. Oh.
And this is, family is one of the keys to America, the family unity. And one of the reasons they do this whole pronoun thing and all of these things, and you can be whoever you want to be, and if you want to be an animal, you can do that, is because what it does is and I'm a lamb. It removes the identity of people.
Yeah.
And you no longer are he, she, or you start to remove that identity. And when you do that, you're a nobody. And they want to make you think that you're somebody because you did that. But in reality, you're a nobody. You've taken your own identity away. And that is what's ruining the family. Is now they're saying, don't worry about everything else. It's you. You determine what's the happiness in your life. And don't care what anybody else says. And to an extent that has some value to it, but they're taking that value and perverting it and basically saying you can determine what you think is right is wrong, what is right is wrong. And no, it doesn't matter what society says is right and wrong. And that is what's undermining the rule of law. And that's a problem because everybody is now, these young kids are going, well, I think it's right. And if you say, well, that 2 + 2 = 4, you're wrong. No, I think it's 2 + 2 = 6.
Yeah.
And so that's all that matters.
Yeah.
And it's that it perverts reality, and it diminishes the human being, and it undermines the family. And that is the whole evil nature around all of this stuff we're seeing.
Yeah, I think it also creates an internalized enemy for those individuals. I mean, so I'm a fan of history. And Marcus Tullius Cicero once said, "A nation can survive its fools and even the ambitious, but it cannot survive treason from within. An enemy at the gates is less formidable, for he is known and carries his banner openly. But the traitor moves amongst those within the gate freely, his sly whispers rustling through all the alleys, heard in the very halls of government." And when it comes to what we're talking about, and even when it comes to the voting thing, I think people don't realize that you can't be your own judge, jury, and executioner. And it's the unfortunate thing that I see with it is it's creating this other, reverse reaction from individuals that believe 2 + 2 = 6, in which they come to the realization that, oh, I made a mistake, so now I have to fight against myself to go back to a thing that I can never change ever again, and now I'm broken because of that. You know,
the United States is a wonderful place. And it's always evolving and changing, swinging the pendulum in different ways. A lot of the things we talk about today, to a different degree throughout history, were conflicting ideas. I mean, Alexander Hamilton and Jefferson had extremely different ideas on how they should view certain things, right? So this is not the first time these kind of things had happened, but ultimately there was a collective idea to put certain parameters around our overall way of believing in the United States, the guardrails, if you will. And if you want to believe something outside the guardrails, everybody will go, okay, you're right to believe in that. Just understand you're outside those guardrails. The problem now is everybody wants to tear the guardrails down and act like they were only there because of some kind of, racist philosophy from the past or some kind of misogynist thing that occurred or whatever the case
Everything
may be.
is demonized. Everything is a racist, a denier, this, a that. Anything that offends their sensibility has become wrong to them. And you have a government telling them, that's right. Your sense of reality is what really we should all get behind. But we can't have a million senses of reality. It doesn't produce a good society. Did you hear Giorgia Meloni, the Italian prime minister, when she won, this new lady that won? She had the best quote. She says, "Fires will be kindled to testify that 2 + 2 = 4. Swords will be drawn to prove that the leaves are green in the summer. That time has arrived and we are ready." And it's true.
Wow, that's a
strong
statement.
That's powerful to say. It's sad, but do swords really need to be drawn to prove that the leaves are green in the summer?
No.
So I got to ask you, Sheriff, though, if our government, our administration, the people that have been in Washington for 30 years through multiple administrations that are really the ones that kind of guide some of the strings or pull some of the marionette strings out there. What is the reason for that? See, I always go back to, two things: follow the money and who wants the power, right? Who wants to stay in power? And somebody has done a calculation that says dumb the population down as much as humanly possible and scatter them in every direction and make them fight amongst themselves, because ultimately, no matter who's in charge, we're in charge.
Until we're not.
Well, that's what everybody has to do is read history. The rise and fall of this, the rise and fall of that. It all happens, as you just read, from the inside out. The rot always occurs on the inside first.
Well, and Sheriff Lamb, I think you probably have a good, I think you have your finger on the pulse with this one, because I've spoken with conservatives and liberals alike who seem to echo a hopeless narrative if their chosen candidate doesn't win. Now, why do you think Americans, quote unquote, due regard in relation to the past and present seems hanging on something so trivial as the representative who will be handcuffed to their interest groups rather than their constituency?
That is a great question, and that is created by the same people that rule us. They have created that sense of, if I don't win, the country will be destroyed. Their politics, by nature, their commercials tell you such. And so then it starts to develop in those people saying, that's right. If that person doesn't win, then my country is going to be lost. And remember, politics has existed for 200 and something years since this country was here. Do I think we're in a crisis in this country? I do. I think there's several things that we need to fix. I think our moral compass is broken. But it's not defined by one politician, by one senator, by one president. Those people have very little to do with your daily life. Really, they don't make many laws And most of the laws that constrict you or affect your daily life are done on a local level. Yes, there is an impact, but in the end, the country is going to continue to survive. We may have some more problems to fix down the road. I'm not sure that politicians are the ones to fix them. I think the biggest thing we need now are term limits. Term limits for judges and politicians, because they are the ones that are skewing this reality of the fact that we need them so much. We don't really need them. And once we stop giving them that power of saying, if you don't get elected, then our country is going to be in the crapper. When we stop giving them that type of power, they will realize once again that they are our servants.
The funny thing is that almost every election I can think of in my adulthood, the person that moved closest to the center of what they felt or the polls showed most people wanted them to do were the ones that would win. Mm-hmm. And that's still generally the case. But the problem that I see now is that once people are in, they flee back to the left or the right, is to where the loudest people in their constituency live. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's counterintuitive for how to move our society forward. So I'm probably not saying this correctly, but a lot of the things that I see are happening today that are making big swinging changes in how our economy moves and all this stuff that I thought 5 years ago would never, ever happen, that all is being funded and happening now, is not because the person that got in didn't say the things that the center wanted to hear. It's because when they got in, they decided to do everything that the very fringes wanted them to do, which is exactly why they should be booted.
Which is what the powers that be want, and if you've watched The Swamp, it's a show that it follows like Matt Gaetz and a few other people. It shows you how much power the parties have, that the Republican Party and the Democrat Party are saying to you once you get elected, great, congratulations. We need you to raise $50,000 this quarter for our party. And then how you say, well, how am I supposed to do that? I'm trying to run my own campaign. Mm-hmm. And they say, oh, go call the wolf and he'll
sell your soul.
Yeah. He'll sell your soul and he'll throw a party for you and you'll raise the $50,000.
It's only worth $50,000. Your soul's not worth a lot.
Right. And that courage that's always it's easier to be that courageous guy when you're running for this office but once you get into the 50 to the 100 to the 435, will you still have the courage to stand for what you believe in on your values? And I think most people end up caving to the pressure of the parties saying you must come and vote on this or you must vote on that, instead of standing up and saying, no, I'm not going to do that. Look at recently, Tulsi Gabbard is a perfect example of somebody who said, no, I'm not okay with this. It's not right. You've deviated from what this party was built on, and I'm stepping away. I took a picture with her and posted it on my site or on my thing. And I did it on purpose because I wanted to see what people would say. And a lot of people loved it and a lot of people hated it. They're like, oh, she believes in the WEF, the World Economic Forum. She believes in doesn't believe in the Second Amendment. And I wanted to get on there so bad and go, we didn't talk politics. No. I merely met the woman and then told her I admired her for her courage. And we had a great conversation as two Americans who love this country. We may love it different, but we love it none the same. And it was just, it shows you just how where we're at as a country. And they've divided us like that.
Well, what's interesting is those people that say things like that, I hate to say this, I'm probably not going to win brownie points. The people who say stuff like that are the same as the people who say the opposite. They're trying to stop us from being healthy like that. Like they're saying the same thing, just on the different side of the coin. Like, look, I can talk with someone who is a Democrat. I can talk with someone who is a Republican. I can disagree with both of them. I think they're both nonsensical sometimes. With that being said, I think they both also have really good points. Sure. And they're also, again, the most important thing, my fellow countrymen.
Well, to the sheriff's point, is he supposed to
just not talk to anybody?
Hate her because
What does that
she's got a
solve?
different opinion on certain things? Well, is that what it's come to?
I'm not naive enough to think that everybody loves guns. You know, here's what I think. What I try to focus on, and this is where I feel like grounds me, is I try to stay focused on the Constitution because it's designed to support every American, regardless of your party. And what's funny though is when you stand up for example, Roe versus Wade, it should have been overturned. You know why? Because it wasn't in the Constitution.
It's bad.
The Remain in Mexico program.
Bad law.
Should have been overturned. Why? Because there's nowhere in the Constitution that says that you must remain in Mexico. Though I think it's a great program. And what people got all worked up about these things, one way or the other, I watched Republicans who were glad that Roe versus Wade were overturned, but then angry because the Remain in Mexico program was overturned. And what I would say to them is, guys, it's about the Constitution. And it wasn't in neither one of those. Now, all the Supreme Court said is it falls on the states to do it because it's not defined in the Constitution, as it should be. And people lost their minds over it because they're not knowledgeable and they don't know about the Constitution. The Constitution protects everybody. And I always tell people, take the Second Amendment. It's not about guns. I said, you folks see it as guns. I see it as the Second Amendment. I don't want you to change the Second Amendment, just like I don't want you to change the First Amendment. And here's what I tell people. Okay, you don't like guns. You want to change it. Which part of the First Amendment will you change? You can only go to church one day a week. Maybe you can only speak freely on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Maybe you can only assemble in certain locations where the government is deemed you can assemble. And maybe the press can only report on Sunday. I said, are you okay with any of that? Well, no. I said, exactly. I don't want you to change the First Amendment in any way. And I don't want you to change the Second Amendment in any way, nor the Third, nor the Fourth, nor the Fifth, nor the Sixth, nor the Seventh, nor the Eighth, nor the Ninth, or 10th. I said, it's about an amendment to the Constitution. If you start changing it because you don't like guns, and if they offend you, or you think that you've fallen into the trap that the government has created to make you think that they're more dangerous than they are, you think that you should take them away.
Well, where do you stop? I mean, if you start with the second, well, I mean,
and that's why I tell people, take the guns away. I don't like the media necessarily, but I will fight till the end for the First Amendment right.
Right.
Same with the right to free speech. I will go online all the time. I scroll through. I see things that are horrible that I don't like, but you know what? I don't get my panties in a ruffle because it's their right to say it. I can, and it's my right to ignore it and move on.
And
how about
it's your
that?
Responsibility to disseminate.
And it's my responsibility as a sheriff to protect it. I protect it. I protect voting rights. I protect everything that was given to us in the Constitution or by the rule of law. That's what I protect. And people don't get that. And I think that we get too far into what we feel one way or the other, and we get off track because of that.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because it muddies the water, makes what you do harder. It makes listening to anybody difficult because look, when I sit down and I listen to, Blake Masters or Carrie Lake or Joe Biden or Nancy Pelosi or anybody in the political office, the last thing I want to hear them talk about is something that is just irrelevant. And it seems to be that we keep, instead of talking about things that are important, we talk about things that are pointless. And, I don't know how to change it because it seems like my demographic specifically and the demographic after me are so focused on those. They're not unimportant to the individual, but they're unimportant in the broad scheme of things. Right. If an asteroid hit us tomorrow, who cares what you identify as? I'm a human wolf hybrid. Who cares? No one's going to care. So it's just, I don't know. It's just unfortunate.
Well, I think, focusing in on important subjects is where we all want to be, including those that have different perspectives than we do. I mean, I would think if you want to move your civilization forward, that's what you would want.
You'd think,
right? And I don't know what the right thing to do is either, but having a consensus on what's important is what you need.
Yeah.
And this is what I go back to when we were talking at the very beginning here. It seems like this is different than the way I view things, because I'm all, everything is gray. Let's talk about that. But if you have a few straight, what's the old saying? You know, I want to be, for my kids, I want to be a straight road in a crooked world. You know, that's what I really want. And if you're viewing something and you see 4 or 5 certain things that you can count on, they're not gray, they're black and they're white, and you can follow those and you can keep in your lane, that's where you start to move forward. You start to make progress with things.
Yeah. And you know, we're in a storm in this country, and people are looking for true north, and I'm trying to be true north for them. Mm-hmm. It gets deemed as political sometimes. I didn't create that. The politicians that created it, they created things, they tried to do things that were not right. Like, for example, your listeners out there, some people like masks, some people don't. Some people like lockdowns, some people don't. Some people like the vaccine, some people don't. They were all an overreach of government, and they were all constitutional violations. Yep. And so my standpoint was, I'm not saying you can't do those things. I'm just saying the government cannot tell you that you can't do those things. It's not the government's place per the Constitution. So I support your right to wear a mask if you want or not want it. If you want a vaccine, go get it. If you don't get it. If you want to stay at home and you're worried about it, then I encourage you to stay home. But if you don't and you want to run your business, then go run your business. We are all adults. Mm-hmm. I can make my own decisions as to whether or not I want to go out. I looked at the information. Mark looked at the information on COVID, and I said, I'm not that worried about it. I don't think it's a risk. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to take the vaccine. I did the math, and you have a vaccine that at best in the beginning, they were saying it was 92% effective. Well, guess what? Based on the fact that I had COVID, I was virtually almost 100% good to go. Yep. So why would I take something that's 92%?
No such thing as natural immunity. Well, what are you talking about?
I mean, it's like 90, 20, 30, 15%.
Yeah, exactly. And so my point in all that is, in the end, I'm just protecting your right and your ability to make your own decisions, especially as it related to health. I didn't think it was the government's any place to. So it goes back to that control factor. And so my job is, as a sheriff, I've always said, is to protect you from the bad guys, from the wolves. But
we can't all be good.
But it's also to protect you from government overreach. And that's how the founding fathers set it up, with checks and balances. And I happen to be one of those checks and balances. And people, it offends their sensibility sometimes, people from the other side or the extremists, that I'm not doing it their way. And it's like, I'm just protecting all of you.
It's amazing that you can offend people by saying it's up to you. Because that's what you're basically telling people. It's your personal decision. It's your, as you said in your book, your curtain of risk, right?
Yeah. I was making my own laws according to them.
You were making laws.
Yeah, I wasn't following the law. It's like, no, I was. Those were mandates and orders, and I was following the Constitution. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, the laws of CNN are real confusing. I really have them written down. So I'd love to talk about. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, it seems as if you haven't even seen the notes and you're just going right through them. So what do you think is the greatest threat right now to the state of Arizona?
Oh, to the state of Arizona, I would say the border. Yeah, I mean, I think the border is honestly probably one of the greatest threats to America. I mean, politics you can change, you can vote in new politicians, you can do things like that, but in the end, fentanyl is killing people, and it's not getting better; it's getting worse. Fentanyl, by the mere statistics, fentanyl is the leading cause of death amongst Americans between the ages of 18 and 45. And Arizona's not immune from that. So I'm not a rocket scientist. I'm telling you because that's what the stats say. And I see it every day. I have to clean up the messes of all these people that are overdosing or not overdosing. They're being poisoned. They're not overdoses. They're being poisoned by fentanyl. And we're constantly every day trying to take it off the street. And then you talk about the immigration piece of it. It's not about immigration. That's what people keep confusing. This is about human trafficking and drug trafficking into America. This is a sensitive subject for Americans, but I will tell you that slavery, I don't think, has ever been more prolific in America than it is today. Women that are being enslaved for the sex trade, with children being enslaved for sex trade, men being extorted, forced to pay back the cartel for money to come here. They never get out from underneath those debts. And we're seeing it, 300,000 plus people coming to the border every month, that the cartels, we're bringing that clientele right to the cartel's doorstep. And so this is what's happening in Arizona. It's what's happening in America. I think the greatest threat to our children and the greatest threat to our communities is the fentanyl poisonings that are happening. And if we don't get on top of it, honestly, it's going to cripple us. I mean, the opium wars of 200 years ago, which we can make some ties and some correlations there. Even though it was Great Britain that did it, China views us as the West too, as they do Great Britain. And if you look at that, they literally brought a dynasty to its knees through the opium wars. The Chinese don't play checkers. They play chess. They understand the art of war, Sun Tzu. They are pouring fentanyl into the precursors for fentanyl into the cartel's hands, and the cartels are more than happy to then bring it into America and sell it to American lives and kill our American families and kill American lives. Last year in Arizona, 33 children died from fentanyl poisonings. 7 were under the age of 1. I mean, that statistic alone should get all these politicians, these senators and people unelected, because they failed us. They failed us. And so those are what I look at. Those are the statistics, and those are the things that are causing us the most problems, at least in Pinal County and probably in Arizona as well.
So for our viewers and our listeners, when this episode comes out, a special election episode, when it comes out, you know, obviously some people will have gone and done their due diligence. Sheriff Lamb, you have experience with some of these individuals, be it, you know, Tulsi Gabbard, you know, Donald Trump, Carrie Lake, Blake Masters, who has like the coolest name ever. With that being said, like, what is it that they can do? I mean, it seems like this is like, what can they do? Whether they win, like say Blake Masters, Carrie Lake, they run away with it. If they win or if they don't, what can the politicians do to help this issue? Because it eventually is going to come to their doorstep.
Well, let's start with Blake Masters first, because I do think Blake Masters is going to squeak this out. I think he will. I think that his opponent, Mark Kelly, is not a good senator. He's not been good for Arizona. His vote is always with the party, and his vote is not what's beneficial to Arizona. He has not been good for border security. He claims he's been doing this for the last 2 years. The results are disastrous. So if you've been working on this 2 years, then you certainly have not done a good job. So he can claim that he's working on it. That doesn't look good. Or you can say you didn't do anything about it, which is probably more likely. Right. So Blake Masters can't do a ton. Blake Masters is one of 100 senators. So you are one vote. So it cracks me up when politicians are like, I'm going to fix this and I'm going to fix that. It's like, you know, I don't know how much you can fix to that, but I do think that he can be a voice for some of these things. And I think that if the Senate goes one way or the other, if it goes back, let's say to the Republicans, he'll be able to do a lot more. His vote will really matter. But on a federal level, there's not a ton that one senator can necessarily do. But other than maybe be very vocal and challenge this government to do it and hold the lackeys underneath accountable. Your Justice Department people, your Secretary of DHS, all of these people. Governor is much different. Governor is an executive. The governor, and I think Carrie Lake's going to win as well. And I think Carrie Lake is an amazing woman. I think she's one of the best candidates in this country, regardless of what people think, because they did a report the other day. 100% of articles written about Carrie Lake are negative. 100%.
That tells the story right there.
So you're not hearing the truth from her. I have spent time, or from the media, I have spent time around Carrie Lake. She's an awesome woman and an amazing candidate. and I think she'll do an amazing job for Arizona. She can do some things. She can declare an invasion. She can do some things. Some of the things that she's talking about are really good. Some of the other things, don't get frustrated if you don't think it's right, because when she wins, we're going to have an opportunity to sit down as law enforcement and really help her curtail that. I care more that you have the energy and the passion to go fight for Arizona than I do that your plans are good or bad. I'm looking for a dog with fight in him. I'm not looking for somebody that has no fight.
Well, you can tell she has a fight in her.
She does. Yeah. And her opponent doesn't. Her opponent failed to show up to any of the debates. That should tell you the Arizonans.
Have we done a wellness check?
Yeah, exactly. Her opponent avoids conflict at all costs, and we're not in a world devoid of conflict anymore. You need a strong person who's going to stand up for Arizona. We need somebody that's going to stand up for state rights, Arizona's state rights. This country was built, this republic was built on state sovereignty and state rights, and we have watched federalism encroach far too much, and we need a governor that's going to stand against that. So there is a lot more that the governor can do as it relates to effectiveness in Arizona. Because she's an executive, and so she can, from the executive branch, and she can fix some of the stuff.
So Texas talked about declaring an invasion. I don't believe they have yet. I think that's a very valid thing to say that is possible, right, as a direction to mend some of the problems at the border. But I've also heard feds talk about saying that the cartels are terrorists, and that would create a different situation with the military. What are your thoughts on that? I
would love for the feds to declare them terrorists. They are terrorists. They strike terror in the hearts of the people that come here.
Does that come from Congress, though? Or does that come from... that's what I'm not sure of.
I don't know that... I think a governor could declare them terrorists. Really? Okay. I don't know how much weight that would carry.
Gotcha.
Because you don't have the military under your purview.
Well, if you think about it, all the things you mentioned, the slavery, if you will, no matter how you define that's going on with the people coming across the border and being put in a position financially to have their spouses or their children be used in a million different ways. We don't really need to, get too deep.
Well, because how many times can you sell a pill to somebody?
Mm-hmm. Well, you told a story last time about a lady that had a bag of pills that were morning after pills because she knew she was going to have to use them.
That's right.
That in the drugs and everything, this all is funneled through a set of cartels across that border. All of it.
And we've allowed it to happen under the name of politics. Mm-hmm. Because politically it aligns with your party, you've turned a blind eye to it. And frankly, more and more that it happens as Americans, all of us, when we don't speak out against it, we are becoming complicit in it. Mm-hmm. The cartel understands that they can sell a woman hundreds of times. They'll get far more for a woman than they will for a 50-cent fentanyl pill, or a $1 fentanyl pill. You could charge $100 for a woman or $50 for a woman. You can do it hundreds of times. Same with a child. In a society where we're watching as they're trying to normalize pedophilia and change how we talk about those people and call them minor attracted persons, and
they're maps to nowhere. They're maps to nowhere. You just pick it up and there's nothing on it, and it's a map.
And that's what they want to do. And what they're doing is, if you don't think the cartel is all but more than willing to meet that demand, do you know how many unaccompanied minors came in the last calendar year? 130,000 children have come in. And the year before, 122,000 unaccompanied minors.
Those people didn't make their way all the way through Central America.
Less than 1% of them and put them into the trade, to the sex trade, you're talking about 1,000 or 1,200 but you've got to believe that they took maybe 10%, 20% of those children that could be now in the sex trade here in America.
See that this here, like hearing this type of stuff
gets me angry.
Yeah, it gets me angry, but it also, what bothers me the most is not that we need some level of immigration reform. Because I agree. I think everything can get better. We need to consistently keep getting better. What bothers me the most is the people that push this, not necessarily the people that follow what the politicians say, because some of them just aren't informed, but the people who are the politicians, they hide behind the best possible thing in America, which is First Amendment. It's the pursuit of happiness. It's the ability to become an American citizen and experience true freedom. They hide behind that while ignoring those problems. It's disgusting.
Well, look,
it's disgusting to watch and see and watch it happen in real time. And you're trying to say something, and then people are just not caring. And then you got people all throughout America going, they don't believe it. They don't believe it. You got the media saying it's a manufactured crisis. You got politicians saying it's a manufactured crisis. How unjust is that for the women that are being enslaved, or the children, or the families who have had loved ones poisoned by fentanyl, which, by the way, is over 107,000 last year.
Right.
I mean, it is such a slap in the face to those people that, I mean, that is why I go out. That's why you see me all over the place.
Right.
Because to me, I believe what Abraham Lincoln said when he said, to sin by silence when they should protest, makes cowards of men. And I refuse to be a coward and stay silent and not say anything about this. And it's not an easy topic to talk about, but it has to be talked about because it's happening right here in America. Mm-hmm. And to undo this is not going to be easy. If they wanted to pass immigration, the Democrats have been in power with Congress, Senate, and the presidency. They could have slam dunked a immigration bill. And frankly, a lot of Republicans would have signed on to an immigration bill. Mm-hmm. Did they put one in front of it? No. You know what they did do? You know how many ICE agents there are here in Arizona? 386. They signed a bill for 87,000 IRS agents.
That's right.
They don't want to protect your borders. They don't want immigration. They want your money. That's what they want. They want to control your life, and they know that if they take your money and control your money, they can control you. And so that is what Americans should be very concerned about.
And anybody that doubts that statement right there just has to look at what happened to the truckers in Canada only 6 months ago.
With good old
those guys' bank accounts were completely cut off by
Castro's son,
right?
I mean, Justin Trudeau. Sorry. He just looks. They look so.
He's like
similar.
Klaus Schwab's son.
Yeah.
Possibly. Exactly.
Maybe a Klaus Schwab, Castro mix.
Honestly, this stuff.
With a little Soros in there too.
Oh my God! This is a thing of nightmares.
We just got your podcast flagged, by the way. We just got it flagged.
It's fine. Well, I think at the end of the day, all this comes down to control, and all of it comes down to censorship. Because we can talk till we're blue in the face about how all the people on the right, or depending on circumstance and who you are, all the people on the left are either A, fixing the votes, or B, a part of the WEF. We can talk about that till we're blue in the face, but we can't talk about what we just talked about a second ago.
That's right.
And I just don't...
Well, that's the frustrating part.
Well, how can those that believe in freedom effectively fight back against censorship when it's offered with a smile and a wink? Instead of an iron fist.
Thomas Paine says the greatest tyrannies are always perpetrated in the name of the noblest causes. They tell you that they're trying to reduce misinformation about COVID or misinformation about voting, or they talk to you like they're doing a good thing, like they're saving you from something. Same with COVID. We are going to take people's voices, any information counter to the vaccines or counter to masks or counter to COVID, off of social media because it is harmful and we're protecting you.
Well, it's harmful
there
to
it
them.
Is right there. There's the statement.
Yeah.
You hear somebody in power say that over and over again without proving they're exactly protecting you in a real, true fashion. You might as well think about what they did 1942. That's what they said to 100,000 Japanese Americans. we're just trying to protect you.
Well, they said it to they also said it to the German people about the Jews who they determined to all have typhus.
Look, I'm not trying to conflate these horrible historical circumstances with today, but maybe I should. Really.
Well,
our job is citizens of the United States having the framework of the Constitution allowing us to say what we want, learn what we need to, change our point of view with all the information that comes at us is something that is unbelievably rare in society throughout history.
Yeah.
I mean, tiny rare. We need to understand that if we want to keep it. We need to use it to...
This is why censorship is so important.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to change it, if you're going to reinvent America like they said 2 years ago, or to build back better, and look, Republicans, Democrats both do it. I'm not here picking on one or the other. Those just happen to be the slogans of the last, of the current administration. When they were running, it was to reinvent America. If you're going to do these things, you have to silence the voice of the opposition, and you control the narrative, and you control all the information that's being put out there, because what you're doing is so counter to what America was built on. So you have to control it, because if not, all these information sources are going to screw up your plan. And so the best way to do it is to censor the people. And you do it under the guise that we're doing what is best for you.
That's exactly right.
The wolf, we're protecting you.
Wait, you're protecting me?
Yeah, protecting your feelings and the bull.
Oh, that's
we're looking
great.
out for what's best for you.
Yeah, of course you are. Yeah.
The problem is people are so deluded into believing that their viewpoint of the future justifies the ends justify the means, right? That's what it comes down to.
Well, I think that's people in power, though.
I'm sorry, what?
That's the people in power. I don't think that's the voting populace. I think the people in power, I think they have that end goal, and the voting populace just thinks that sounds nice.
If you don't think this stuff matters, like they changed global warming to climate change.
Right.
Yeah.
They had to repackage it. They were down for a few years.
Yeah, marketing was bad.
They had to hire a firm.
Because when it got colder, they debunked it.
Yeah, it didn't help.
So they changed it to climate change. So now they can claim, like any hurricane, which have existed forever, they can claim that it's because of the emissions and the carbons and all this stuff. And so they can claim anything as climate change. Our president, when the hurricane hit, he goes down there and gives a speech and says, first of all, he's like, the best thing you can do to protect yourself from the hurricane is get vaccinated.
Well, you said that way too well.
Yeah.
This was putting in vaccinations. And,
who do you think could say it better, Fetterman or Biden?
Wow. When I was the president of my third grade kindergarten class, yeah, he did go down there and talk about getting vaccinated.
I couldn't even believe he threw that in there.
Well, I just didn't know hurricanes wouldn't kill you if you had the vaccine.
Oh, no, you're protected.
Yeah.
From hurricanes.
They should have pitched it that way the first time. I would have been more on board.
And then they tie in everything to... There's three things that they really run with. One is climate change, because it suits the globalist agenda. It works for the globalist agenda, because then you can control what you drive, what you spend, anything. That's what they're trying to control. Number two is, I freaking lost my train of thought. I was so focused on the globalist piece.
After that whole Biden speech,
right? I just pulled up. That's what I did for talking crap.
Well, look, I guess the funny thing is we're talking about these things, and you said people don't believe it. Look. Am I a proponent of what Al Gore, the founder of the internet, discovered in the 90s? Am I a proponent of climate change? If you phrase it like science, yeah, I'm a proponent of science. But here's the funny thing. No one ever offers an actual answer to any of it that fixes anything.
Well, no, they offer an answer
by a priest.
That's actually going to cause more problem for a while before you can even get close. Well, and it's not going to just cause...
Well, that's okay. Well, don't lose yourself. You don't want the bull to. You're seeing red. You're seeing
Remember,
red.
I have a geophysics degree.
Yeah, you chill just a tad. My thing is look. I would be all on board for all of this if the answers that they provided weren't wet fart answers. Like, we're going to solve the problem with wind turbines. Really?
Which take so much energy to produce.
Like if they had,
and they're such an eyesore.
Huge.
Killing the birds.
And they kill more birds than
that was an eagle. You like that? Or hawk? That was a hawk.
How about the batteries for the electric cars?
There you go. That's where I was headed.
I mean,
they're going to cost more. We're going to have to wipe out every.
But that's what people don't get. And what they've done is they've created an army of people that are just so angry about the climate because it's going to kill everybody. But they're willing to kill everybody.
Well.
For the climate, it's like.
Well, meanwhile, those people that are angry about it are eating these protein replacements that are all made from vegetable oils, something that is highly refined and probably not good for the climate. So, I mean, it's just weird.
It doesn't matter what we do. China and all these other countries, they're never going to do it.
And by the way, this is not us saying that we can't come up with ingenuitive things. We've talked about this on the show before. It's just the answer. Like, I normally don't like calling people dopes, but the answer that these dopes keep coming up with through poor legislation and just bad ideas, it just ain't it. Well, it's not it.
Honestly, it's not even the legislation thing. Look, if we have a process in the United States to go through Congress to put laws together that are actually something we can all read, maybe after they put it up on the internet for one day before they pass it, 1,000 pages. And I think I've heard you say before, it should never be any longer than the Declaration or the Constitution.
It should be a paragraph.
It's real simple. Give me the bullet points, and then we can argue about it, and then fill in the details.
And no pork.
If they took an agenda item and said, "This is what we want to do. We want to fix these bridges," not fix these bridges and do these 14,000 other things that have nothing to do with fixing bridges. Yeah. That would be great. Yep. But that's not the way we work. And I get compromise, I get all that. I even love the idea that our world is full of people with such disparate interests and that get emotional and want to do something. And I don't care if somebody yells about the climate or not. I think that's wonderful human element.
Yeah.
What I care about is when that element becomes not just a noise at me or something for me to research, but becomes something that's mandated upon me to take care of.
Or violently attempting to make you believe the way they believe.
I'm going to force you.
Yeah. And I don't like that. I'm not for it. I think that you got to let Americans just live their lives and let them do what they're going to do. If they want to drive a big old truck, burns through gas, and so be it.
Make a better truck.
Yeah.
And make it affordable. This is the question. Like, it's like, look, like, Elon, you're fantastic. I like you. Why are your cars so expensive? And he has an answer for it. He has an answer, and it's probably reasonable.
And you know
one.
what? If you're a first adopter and you like that technology, I've driven an S.
Yeah, they're fun. They're really fun.
Man,
but
nice.
but the thing is, like, if this was this much of a crisis, it would be affordable. Heck, I would argue it would be to the behest of those who believe in a ideology that I do not profess to. It should be free. If that's such a crisis, right? Like, so
the problem right now is that the changes that people want to develop, maybe 200 years from now, we'll look back and some of these changes were the right thing to do, and so maybe some of them weren't, and all that. Who knows? History always tells those details. But for right now, we're not trying to move the boat slowly in a new direction.
No.
We're trying to just spin on a dime.
Right.
And we're going to create way more problems than we have right now doing it. And as you said earlier, it's going to be a volatile time. Nothing we can't eventually fix. Luckily, we're in the United States of America, which has a GDP that's so much above everybody else that we have we have the ability to watch these things happen and actually functionally do something about it.
Yeah.
And luckily, we have very mildly intelligent people who wrote books called American Sheriff Rules to Live By
100%.
that help give you a guide to these kind of troubling times.
I love the way you just brought that right back around
see that?
where it belongs. That was nice.
Yeah. And honestly,
what do you mean you're not a politician? You're definitely a politician.
Well, I'd love to end with a few quotes and then one final note on censorship, and then we can wrap up in the interest of time. Do check out the book. I know, Sheriff Lamb says he's not an author. I read his book.
He's not an author. He's an author.
Oh, sorry, author. I'm clearly not a English expert here. But yeah, his book's a great book. Easy read, quick read. It's a phenomenal book. Now, If liberty means anything at all, it means the right to tell people what they do not want to hear. That is from our buddy George Orwell. Claim the truth and do not be silent through fear. That is from Saint Catherine of Siena.
Love it.
This is slavery, not to speak one's thought. That is from Euripides in The Phoenician Woman. There are more instances of abridgment of the freedom of the people by gradual and silent encroachments of this in power than by violent and sudden usurpations. James Madison. Fear not, do right is echoed in statements against censorship. The very premise of liberty rejects the suffocation that censorship advocates for. Ironically, the very institution thought to uphold the merits of liberty since the founding of this country has ever so slowly pushed for more and more censorship as time has gone on. They mask their requests with nicely written anecdotes and bumper sticker slogans. Why do you think there's such a push for censorship, especially now when it's in direct contradiction to the very idea of America and freedom?
They need it. If they're going to exact their plan, you've got to censor the other side. You've got to censor the dissenting opinions. That's the only way you do it. And social media, if you control it, is the best place for them to censor it. They can censor what because you want to say the scientists tell you that there's this, that there's global warming, or there's scientists that tell you that the vaccine works. Well, there's also other scientists saying no, that doesn't work, or no, the climate is not in decay. And what they've done is they've given themselves the power to say that doesn't work for us. We need to censor that. But the censorship is probably one of the most dangerous things to America, because America thrives, a republic thrives on an abundance of information that we can sift through. You know, we need all that information. We don't need censorship. The reason we need that information is because the way the republic works is we're expected to elect an official that is going to represent us at a national level or at a state level or at a local level. And if you don't have all the information, if information is being censored and deprived from you, you could potentially send the wrong person to represent you in our republic, and it could have a negative effect on our republic, which I believe is what we're seeing now. Mm-hmm. That's censorship. And when you involve government in it, which now it appears there's ample information and even evidence that is showing that there was a potential censorship on behalf of the FBI, encouraging social media platforms to censor. So censorship is extremely dangerous, probably as dangerous as fentanyl, because that censorship affects the republic and the life of the republic. And it also creates anger and animosity. You shut down one voice and embolden another. And what it does is it doesn't allow for the American people to process the information the way they should. And get it all. And some of it you may or may not like. Some of it you may gravitate to. Some of it you may not. But the idea is in America that you are not to be censored from anything that comes out. And I don't find any circumstance under which the government should promote censorship. And I don't find any circumstance under which a private corporation in good faith should censor somebody's voice. They have the right. Private corporations have the right, but not at the behest of the government.
Mm-mm. You know, wars throughout history, the winners of wars write the histories, right? And
not only that, they create the wars. The
yeah,
pen is mightier than the sword.
Well, a lot of times things are created intentionally so that they can be solved by the same people that created them. We've talked about that before, and you see that all the time. But when histories are written from the bias, if you will, of the winner, we kind of all understand that. And if you read through history and that we have such an abundance of knowledge today, you can sift through that because we're Americans. We should have all that available to us to look at and see. The trouble that I have with a lot of what's going on now with censorship is that we're not at war with ourselves. We should not be. Let's put it that way. We should not be. So why is it that whoever gets in office, and again, I'm not trying to pick political parties or any of that kind of stuff. Whoever is in power at one given time should not act like they're just the winner of a war and they're creating a new history, because that's what that censoring really is. Our country is, I think, is as good as it is because of the ability throughout our history to look at each other and feud with each other and come up with something in the middle that everybody can accept as a framework for our existence and moving forward. This history, 1,000 years from now, we'll look back at this country and just be shocked and amazed at our meteoric rise to where we went. And they're likely to be shocked and amazed at the meteoric fall if we don't change it by standing up for what we believe in.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on censorship?
You know, I think it goes both ways. I think that there are some individuals who want only certain views on one side to be talked about, per the individuals that got mad about the Tulsi Gabbard photo. And and then there's the other side that wants it to be all one way in their direction. And it's sad because at the end of the day, it's just it's all about control. And by trying to control everything, you create a jail for yourself long term. And I don't think people realize that. I mean, traditional values in a modern world, every single anecdote that you bring up about your life talks about how it's just good to let life occur and operate in the ways that you can. The same can be said about American Sheriff Rules to Live By. The rules are not life; they're rules to apply.
That's right.
And it's unfortunate. You know, I'm a old wolf, but I'm a young man, and so I understand that there's a lot of life left to be lived. It's just really unfortunate that some individuals, older or younger than me, haven't yet figured out that you just can't control everything. You can't.
Yeah. One of the sheriff's favorite sayings, I believe, maybe you're thinking the same one I am or not, but it's probably my favorite. That's just simply surrender the outcome.
That's it. I think it's one of the key things to it. You've got to let life you've got to live the life, and you can't control what somebody else's life, what they are supposed to experience in life, or yours. I mean, you can help, but you can't impede on it or control on it, because you're depriving them of something. You're depriving them of growth. You're depriving them of an experience that they needed to bring something better out in them. And so that's part of the reason I love what you were saying, because I think that, and thank you for talking about both the books, because I think that that's what censorship does. That's what control does. And it is designed to inhibit I believe in God. It is designed to inhibit what our God-given individuality, authenticity, and talents that we have to share with this world. It inhibits that. And by its nature, that control and that censorship is ungodly in a sense, because it is depriving the people of becoming who they were meant to be and what they can share with the world. And so, I believe in surrendering the outcome and letting people say what they're going to say. And some of it's criticism, but like Aristotle says, the only way to avoid criticism, do nothing, say nothing, be nothing.
That's good.
And in the end, I refuse to. That's why I write the books. I refuse to not do anything. I refuse to not say anything, and I refuse to not be anything. And so that's the approach I take to life.
Yeah,
excellent.
That's really good. And you know, obviously, you bring a message of truth. You bring something that's needed, a message of hope to people. And you know, if you guys are, if our listeners and our viewers are looking for something that's uplifting, both of Sheriff Lamb's books are phenomenal. Sheriff Lamb, it's been wonderful speaking with you.
Oh, I always love doing this show with you guys.
Yeah, it's been phenomenal. I think it's been a wonderful conversation. I think this episode is going to provide some additional insight, not only for our listeners, but also for our viewers, on who you are as an individual, and you know, some of the principles that you live by, and some of the principles that maybe they can apply to their own life. Now, for our listeners and our viewers, where can they find you? How can they get their hands on your newest book? And is there anything in particular you'd like them to know?
That last question is what got me, what I wanted to know. Well, I wrote it in the books.
There you go.
I want you to know you can get those books on Amazon, although I prefer you to get them at americansheriff.store or at sheriffswife.com. My wife is launching her second book next week. It's called Bravery and Blinders. Love to get her on the show if you ever want her. She's great.
I think so.
She's a good interview. And her book is very good as well, but you can see that, get those books there, and you can get their books, the ones you buy on the site at americansheriff.store or Sheriff's Wife. We personalize those books and send them out to you. So please get them there. Follow me on American Sheriff on Instagram, American Sheriff on Truth Social, and Sheriff Lamb on Facebook. And then I'm going to probably get back into Twitter now, and that's Sheriff Lamb 1. And what I want people to know is that America is still the greatest country in the world. Don't listen to your politicians. Don't listen to the mainstream media. They want you to think that it's not. There's 300,000 people that show up every month to our borders that believe different. It is still the greatest country. It is still the bastion of freedom. We still have the ability to change the direction of this country. November 8th is that date. Please get out and vote. Vote for the person that most meets what you believe as a person and as an American. And please just continue to fight for American values and the way of life, the Constitution, freedom, because our ability to disagree with each other or agree with each other was built on the very same things that you may or may not like, and that's the Constitution and the Founding Fathers and what they gave us, and ultimately freedom. So still the best country in the world, and don't give up on her, and let's come together as a people. That's really where our power is. I always share 2 Timothy 1:7, for God hath not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Our power is we the people, standing together. Don't let them divide you on race, religion, color, political differences. You can't. I always tell the zebra stripes, but I know we're wrapping up, so I won't tell the zebra stripes today.
I mean, if you want to, you can.
Yeah.
Okay, so zebra stripes. It's actually Jordan. It's actually Jordan Peterson, and then I promise I'll wrap it up after I do these three things. The zebra stripes. Jordan Peterson actually tells it. A scientist wants to understand why zebras have stripes. Some people say it's for camouflage, but that's not true because a lion is tan. He could be a couple feet in front of you and you wouldn't see him. But a zebra you can see from a mile away. So he's like, I want to know why these zebras have stripes out in the middle of the Serengeti. So he goes out and he's watching this herd of zebras. He's watching one and he looks down to make a note. And when he looks back up, he can't find the zebra he was watching. It mixed in with the other ones. So he's like, I got an idea. I'm going to get a can of paint. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to paint an X on the butts of a few of these zebras. So the next day he does that, gets in his Jeep, takes the can of paint, goes out, paints a red X on the butts of a few of the zebras. Now he can watch them. He comes back. He thinks he's pretty slick. Well, he gets up the next morning and the predators ate those zebras. And what he learned is that the predators cannot hunt the herd. The predators have to divide you, have to identify one of you to hunt you. And he also learned that the zebra stripes were not camouflaged from their surroundings. They were camouflaged for each other. It's the we the people principle. It's Excellent. That we as a herd is where our strength and our protection and our power comes from, not as individual zebras. And so you still need zebras like me who paint a big red X on my butt and go out there and put myself at risk to the predators. And mind you, they're not lions that are hunting us. These are jackals and hyenas trying to partition us out. They want to divide you on anything they can. That's why they make a big deal in the media every time there's something that's Roe versus Wade, climate change, any of these things that race, religion, political differences, philosophical differences, all of these things, they by design are wanting to separate you from the herd because they know that the herd is the power. So we the people take back your power. Number 2, love. You've got to instill love back in this country. This country was built on our goodness. Alexis de Tocqueville, who was a Frenchman who came here in the early 1800s, sent by the French government to understand what made America great, and to understand the American penal system and the American Constitution. So he comes here, spends a lot of years here, ends up writing a 4-volume series called Democracy in America, becomes world renowned because of it. But in there he writes, I searched for her genius and power in her commodious harbors and in her ample rivers, and it was not there. In her fertile fields and in her boundless prairies, and it was not there. In her rich mines and in her vast world commerce, and it was not there. Not until I went into the churches of America and discovered her pulpits aflame with righteousness did I understand her genius and power. America was great because she was good. And if America ever ceased to be good, America will cease to be great. We have to get back to our goodness. You dispel darkness with light, not with more darkness, not with more hate. So you've got to come together as a people. Not as only is it our power, but the love is what will transcend the differences that we are currently experiencing with one another. So you got to restore the love. And the last thing is of a sound mind. You cannot let them get you sideways. I always explain to it what a flashbang is. A flashbang is a little canister. It's kind of like a grenade, but there's no shrapnel. And we use it when we serve search warrants because what it does is it's boom, a big loud noise, a bright light, and percussion. And it's designed to take away your auditory abilities, to take away your vision temporarily because of the bright light, and to discombobulate you because of the percussion. We as Americans have been flashbanged. By the media, by politicians, we have been flashbanged. If we don't get our wits about ourselves really quick, we're going to be in big trouble. And so you've got to be of a sound mind. You've got to take control of the ship. You cannot let them get you sideways and angry and frustrated. That's all by design. So you've got to be in control and of a sound mind. And I know I shared this before, and it's the quote that I end this book with by James Allen, As a Man Thinketh. So as soon as you read American Sheriff, Traditional Values in a Modern World, and American Sheriff Rules to Live By, which you can get on Amazon and americansheriff.store, read As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. It should actually be on your monthly reading list. And in there he says, keep your hand firmly upon the helm of thought. In the bark of your soul reclines the commanding master. He does but sleep. Wake him. Self-control is strength. Right thought is mastery. Calmness is power. Say unto your heart, peace be still. We all have a commanding master inside of us. You got to wake them up and get them up to the helm of the ship to navigate these difficult waters. We'll be okay if you do those things, if you take back your power, you restore the love in this country and the goodness in this country. And if you can keep your mind, a sound mind, keep your mind about your wits about you and all about you, or blaming it on you, that's truly where we're going to find our greatness again in America. So that's it. That's awesome. What I want people to know. Good. That's a lot, but it's what I want them to know.
Oh, that's good. I'm ready to cross the Delaware. Will you join me?
Let's do it.
But yeah, no, Sheriff Lamb, thank you again so much for joining us. It is just always such a pleasant conversation. I mean,
it is. He actually, I started to get angry this time, and I think your last statement now told me to get a hold of myself.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to have.
So when I speak, I do that. Yeah. You have to. People need to understand the severity of what it is, but like you have to have a plan as to how we're going to fix this.
Yeah.
And you have to know that we can.
Yeah.
And that we will. And so that's the idea is, yes, you need to understand what's going on, but we can do this. We're Americans. Like,
if anyone can.
We supposedly put people on the moon.
I mean,
that's a different podcast entirely.
Yeah. We've done some incredible things.
Yes,
like
we have.
The current administration we have. But yeah, just again, thank you so much. Thanks to our viewers and our listeners. Thank you for tuning into the Wolf and Bull podcast. Check out his books. They're phenomenal. And this is going to come out before November 8th. I'm going to get it out on the Monday. We're gonna
I love it. I love it.
Nice hard work over
Get out and vote then.
Yep.
That's right.
Yep. This is going to come out before November 8th. So when you see this, make sure to do your due diligence as a citizen and as an American. But we will see you again next week.
God bless.